So as I have mentioned, I'm Gabriela. I'm from Eskimi, and here in Eskimi, we always seek to deliver the highest quality inventory that drives the results. However, to increase the transparency, half of a year ago, we onboarded Integral Ad Science as one of our partners. So clients can opt in and use IS to evaluate and verify the traffic where their ads are served at. And a few months ago, when we talked with Clem, who is representative of IS, we discussed that not only results are one of our key goals, but as well education of the market. This is why we decided that it's really crucial to do a webinar about media quality and what are the components of it. It is not only from the generic perspective, because maybe we have like different understandings of media quality, what are the components of media quality in general, but when I'm looking at the past year, when a lot of people were using their smartphones much more, there's just a lot of opportunities for fraudsters to do bad stuff online and actually to decrease the media quality. So it's not only relevant from generic perspective, but looking at the market trends as well. So I believe I'm not going to take much more time, and I will give the floor to Clem from IS to present the topic and deep dive into media quality. So yeah, Clem, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. So yeah, my name's Clem. I work at Integral Ad Science in their London office. And what I guess the goal of today is really, as Gabriel said, to give you an introduction to what media quality is, what it includes, why it's important, and what you can really do about it through this partnership with the Skimmy that we have in place. So the first, I guess, area that we'll look at is basically the growth of the internet. So the internet has grown rapidly. There are more and more pages of data available than there ever has been, and it's this expansion and the sort of rate of expansion that means different tools are required to stay on top of everything. As a result, we know that machine learning is the only way in the future that we can continue to stay on top of the rate of change that is in the online space. There's two sort of ways to approach it. One being a rules-based methodology, where if this happens, then that is the result. But when you look at the amount of information that there is and the rate it increases, you need a much more sophisticated tool to continue to measure media quality. And the reason I mention this, it's really the boom in data that we're focusing on. And much of digital media, again, the most traded currency within digital media has been CPMs. And the more CPMs that are delivered at the cheapest rate is generally what advertisers have been wanting to purchase. And I guess this aim for cheaper impressions has led to more quantity being available, but not necessarily of the highest quality. And at IES, our goal and why we work with publishers and advertisers and platforms and DSPs and exchanges and everything in the middle is we're moving away from a volume game, or trying to help the market move away from a volume game and make it all about quality, so that advertisers and suppliers are transacting on impressions that are going to make the biggest difference to the advertiser and the consumer at the end of the day. So what is media quality and media quality at the moment? So at IES, we define it into three separate pillars. The first pillar being invalid traffic and fraud. The second being viewability and out of view ads, and the third being brand safety and suitability. And looking at the current landscape, so these percentages that you see here are from the first half of 2020, January to June, and it is roughly about 2 trillion impressions that we've measured. And these are the rates that we've seen for fraud, ads that are out of view, and risky content as a whole at a macro level across every impression that we've measured, which, as I mentioned, is around 2 trillion. Which, those percentages are, helpful, but when we look at them in terms of media spend, that 13% ad fraud on a standard campaign of 10 million impressions at, say, a $1 CPM, that's $1,300 that has been spent on bots or on fraudulent inventory, and essentially it's wasted at the end of the day. It's ads that have delivered that have no chance of someone ever clicking on them, buying the product, influencing the consumer, or anything along those lines. Similar to the out of view and the viewable impressions, if 32.4% of ads are not ever seen on the screen, there's no chance they have to influence people. So that again is $3,240 of a campaign that is wasted because the ads can't be seen. Similar again to brand safety, in the same sort of scenario, 10 million impressions at a $1 CPM, $470 of that media spend has been wasted. It's media that you prefer not to have spent your money on. So when we, I guess, look at IAS and what we're really trying to do, we are trying to deliver quality impressions. And what we define as a quality impression is an ad that is viewable, it's fraud-free, so it's to a human, it's in a safe and suitable environment, and it's in the right geographic area. And all of these things independently are, have different levers to achieve and different measurements that are available. But it's, this is what we're really helping advertisers to deliver on, and how we're helping platforms and publishers and those sorts of supply side clients to optimize their inventory towards and deliver out for advertisers. Why this is all important, here's a couple of case studies that we have. So the first one, there was a major advertiser, they were an automotive client. They looked at their Facebook delivery through the IAS partnership that we have with Facebook, and they looked at where ads were delivering where they didn't want them to, and essentially optimized their campaign using a content allow list. And they actually saw a 66% decrease in their cost per conversion when they were buying higher quality media. Again, this one in the middle here, a FMCG or a consumer packaged good client, they identified that they were bidding on 32 million fraudulent impressions per month, which this is a lot more than the 13% of the 10 million we were looking at earlier. This is a huge amount of fraudulent impressions. And when they started looking at the IAS results and then other sort of tools that we have, they decreased this rate from 9% to 1%, and they reinvested that 32 million impressions back towards media that was making a difference. It was driving conversions, it was driving brand uplift and all those sorts of things, because they weren't spending it on fraud anymore. There was a major retailer in the UK who, by buying better quality media, they were able to attribute that 79% more people visited their stores, which is, it's almost common sense in a way that if your ads are seen by people in the right environments, they're going to make a difference. And these are sort of the stats that back up that, this is what happens. And I guess deep diving into the pillars, let's first look at ad fraud. So ad fraud levels have been increasing year on year for as long as we've been measuring it. These numbers here are for non-optimized IVT. So non-optimized being no methods that are in place to mitigate the effects of fraud. So nothing's been done to avoid fraud. This is pure open market for desktop display and mobile web display that we've had our tracking on, that we've seen levels of fraud increasing more and more. It's also very interesting to note that desktop display, although it has a higher level of fraud, or we've measured a higher level of fraud, as more and more advertisers have transitioned to mobile, you can see between 2018 and 19 that rate has increased significantly. And that is fraudsters following where the money goes. So if there's more money and more advertisers going towards mobile, you're going to start seeing more fraudulent ads and more fraudulent users on mobile as well. When we're actually looking at how ad fraud works, which will give a lot more context. So ad fraud starts with a hacker or a fraudster, and what they will do is they will build a whole lot of bots, and the bots are essentially just a script and that script will follow a set of instructions when it's activated. So they will then try and hide these bots or these scripts in the standard places where you get a computer virus. So various websites, apps, emails, getting you to click on a link and unknowingly install a bot onto your computer or device or tablet or whatever it is. Once you've then downloaded that bot, what those bots will do is they will start executing the instructions that the fraudster set at the start, and they will start visiting premium sites. They will start going to the Financial Times, and they'll start going to automotive sites, and they'll start going to news sites, and they'll start going to real estate websites, or anything that's going to build them a really valuable cookie profile so that they look like a user who is, actively clicks on ads and has lots of money and is looking to buy an expensive car. That's the sort of user that they want the bot to look like. So once these bots have then built up that cookie profile, they will then go to a site that's owned by the hacker or by the fraudster who set them up in the first place, and they will start seeing as many ads as possible and clicking on as many ads as possible. And those ads are continuously served to the bots over and over and over and over again. And then what happens is that that site is set up through an exchange or through a couple of shell companies. And essentially each time it's sold as traffic to some, lower quality websites. And each time those ads deliver, that botnet operator gets paid. So they've created the audience, they've created the site, and advertisers are then delivering to those fake people on those low quality sites. And that's how the botnet operator gets paid at the end of the day. So some of the tools that we'll use to understand when we're seeing a bot or when it's a dodgy website are things like mouse patterns. So there's a whole lot of other methodologies that we'll go through, but in the interest of time, I'm just talking about this one. So you can see on the left-hand side here, a human, when they're using their mouse or their cursor, it's very inconsistent and sporadic. There's the heat map represents red being when the mouse is sat for a long time, green in the middle, and blue at the sort of lightest amount. And you can see there's lines in every direction. Some have stayed longer and smaller. Whereas when you look on the right-hand side, you see a bot mouse pattern. And that is, instantly the mouse or the cursor has gone from one spot to the next with no drag time in between. It's moved faster than a human can move. It's moved, in such a way that it's not possible for you or I or anybody else to move their mouse in that pattern that the bot has identified there. So these are just some of the things that we'll use to help understand if, when we're delivering an ad, is it to a fraudulent user or a human? And this is just some of the examples that we'll use. And again, re-looking at this FMCG client that we mentioned earlier, they avoided, by using our tools, they were able to identify where the fraudulent ads were, what the typical domains were, or which users or which exchanges or that they were delivering those fraudulent ads on. And they started to optimize their buy away from these fraudulent places and decrease their IVT level from 9% to 1%, and were able to reinvest that budget back into the highest quality media. So what can be done about ad fraud? And this is where we get to talk about the partnership between Eskimi and IAS. So what we can help do if you opt in is differentiate the types of fraud that you're seeing. So there's two different levels of IVT. There's GIVT, which is general invalid traffic, and sophisticated invalid traffic. Sophisticated invalid traffic is the fraud. That's the really bad stuff that we've been talking about. GIVT is more your testing environments. It's trafficking creatives and making sure they're running correctly. That's the GIVT. So we can help you differentiate what type of fraud you're actually seeing. We can then help you track which sites and which activities have seen the highest levels of fraud or the lowest levels of fraud. And then, with that information, you can then start to deliver or optimize your buying to deliver on sites that have lower level of fraud, or strategies that have lower fraud levels. Or you can even use our firewall technology to block delivering to fraudulent advertisers or on fraudulent sites. And that's something else we'll go into a little bit later on. So the next one is talking about viewability. So viewability is an ad being in view on the screen. And there are two main definitions for display and video. So display is although it sounds slightly more complicated, it's easier for me to understand. So for an ad to be viewable in a display environment, at least 50% of the pixels need to be in view, so on the browser window, for at least one continuous second, and the ad must have rendered in an area greater than 20 by 20 pixels, which is about the size of a little emoticon smiley face. For video, 50% of the ad must be in view for at least 2 continuous seconds. That one's slightly simpler, I guess, in a way. So when we're talking about viewability, and as you mentioned before, as we mentioned earlier, about 32% of ads are not viewable. So why an ad wouldn't be viewable really comes down to two main factors. There's the environment, so it's which site is the ad loading on, and could that be a reason why the ad is not viewable, or is it something the viewer or the consumer has done? So if we look at the environment, if the ad loads outside the area, so at the bottom of the page and the user never scrolls down that far, that ad is not going to be seen. There's a fraudulent practice called ad stacking, where a publisher could deliver 5 different MPUs or 300 by 250s, all one stacked behind the other, and they're delivering 5 impressions for one user appearing on the screen, but impressions 1 to 4 are never seen. It's only the top impression that's seen. So it could be a result of fraudulent activity. There could be multiple ads stuffed within the same pixels, or the pages are refreshed so quickly that the ad never fully loads and renders on the screen. From a consumer standpoint, if you've got, say, the 970 by 250 at the top of a page, if a user scrolls down before that second has passed, or before that even ad has loaded, that ad is not going to be seen. If the browser got minimized before the ad had a chance to load as well, again, that ad is not going to be seen, but the ad call has already been made. So an ad's going to be delivered back, but never be seen. If there's multiple tabs that you have open, and the ads are being refreshed and loading on those tabs when they're not on your sort of viewable active top tab, then again, the ads won't be seen. Or if there's a bot that's been in place, and obviously a bot's not a real person, so the ad can't be seen either way. So what we do is we work with advertisers. What advertisers want is the chance for their ads to be seen. So we have, we uphold the MRC viewability standard, which is that 1 second continuous second in view for 50% of the pixels plus rendering. We then measure viewability across different channels and platforms, be it mobile web, mobile app, display, desktop, video. It's important to be able to track viewability on all formats. And then what we aim to be able to do is help advertisers understand beyond just in view for 1 second, things like time in view and how long that ad has been seen. An ad that's been on the screen for 10 seconds versus 2 seconds, what one do you want to optimize more towards as your brand? Does 10 seconds get a higher click-through rate than 2 seconds? It's up to you to start to, I guess, look at those insights and optimize the buying behavior on the back of it. So looking at a case study, this one was with Toyota and Group M. So Toyota's goal was to get users to download brochures for one of their new car models. I don't know exactly which car model it was. Group M ran a case uplift study on the back of it and tracked the attribution. And what they found is that the group of people who saw the viewable ad had an 83% uplift rate compared to the group of users who did not see the viewable ad, which, it sounds like a huge number, but it also really makes a lot of sense that if an ad's been seen by someone, it's got so much more of a chance to make an impact on them than if it was never seen. If it's loaded at the bottom of the page or on a tab, a few tabs back, and it was never seen by someone, of course, it's not going to have as much of an impact. So viewability has become something key for brands like Toyota and agencies within Group M to really want to deliver out. What can be done about viewability? So again, this is part of the partnership with Eskimi and IAS. What we recommend is setting a benchmark to understand what level of viewability is correct for your brand and for the activities that you're wanting to do. Do you have the same viewability benchmark for performance campaigns as you do for branding campaigns? These are the sorts of things that you need to understand. And when we talk about viewability, obviously 100% viewability would be fantastic. But if if a 100% viewable ad costs 4 times the price of a 50% viewable ad, does the return on investment stack up? Is it worth paying 4 times as buying one ad when you could buy 4 50% and working that ROI out? The next part of it is understanding the performance. So it's understanding that with your current buying, what does the performance look like so far? Are you delivering on average, below average, above average? You might not need to change a thing. And then we can help to understand which sites or which channels or strategies that you're purchasing have the most viewability or the least viewability, and then start to optimize the buying from there. And it's all helping to improve the buying strategy. And if viewability is not important to you, you don't need to spend lots of money trying to buy the most viewable places. But if it is, and it all helps to lead to the goal at the end of the day, which is the ads being seen and having an impact on the consumer. Next pillar is brand safety and suitability. So brand safety and suitability, it's not a binary measure of is the ad in view or is it not, or is it invalid traffic or a human. Like, brand safety is less binary. And if we look at a content pillar like alcohol, on the far left here you've got how getting a fake ID will open up your whole world, or a Boy Scouts family was sent to prison after there was a drink driving car accident. These are sort of the worst kind of alcohol content that you could possibly want to be around. Whereas on the right hand side we can see an article about should we be drinking less alcohol, and the health benefits, or a winery that is being talked about in a business sense. And if we were to look at brand safety in that same binary way, either pass or fail, all of these articles mention alcohol, but they're not all safe. So this would be looking at them in a binary way, saying, okay, alcohol, they're all safe, or alcohol is mentioned, they're all unsafe. But we know that there's a big difference between getting a fake ID and understanding the health benefits of drinking less alcohol. And so what we aim to do, and this is especially important when we think about the machine learning to understand the boom of content available, what we want to help brands do is customize the level of risk that they're willing to appear against, and optimize in that sort of way as well. So, the best wine deals at restaurants, that's questionable in the middle because it sort of encourages alcohol, but it's definitely safer than the Boy Scouts or getting a fake ID, but it's probably not as safe as the health benefits of drinking less or a business article. So what IAS offers is 8 different content categories and 5 different levels of risk that you can set against those. So each brand we recommend to set your thresholds and understand what is safe for you, what's suitable for you, and after we deliver ads out, seeing what the reporting is and optimizing towards places that are most safe and suitable for what your brand is looking to do. 2 case studies when looking at brand safety and suitability. So there was an automotive brand that decreased their brand risk from 19% to 2%. So they were actively looking at the partners that they were working with. They were looking at, where were they seeing the highest brand risk and optimizing away from it. And over a 3-year period, without impacting scale, they made got their average brand risk down from 19% to 2%. So they were able to reinvest 17% of their budget back into the most effective media that was making the biggest difference for them. Another one, Nestle, they flagged that 10% of their media spend was going to unsafe impressions. So when we say 10%, so the sites that they were buying, so of say a $100,000 budget, $10,000 was going towards 3.8% of the total delivery, but that was still costing 10% of their budget. So they were able to get rid of this really, I guess, dense, expensive line that wasn't doing them any favors in terms of brand safety. And they were able to reinvest 10% of their budget into the more effective placements overall. And I guess, again, talking about what can be done about brand safety, in the first instance, every brand is different and you need to understand what risk is right for your brand. Do you have a hard stance on alcohol? Do you know, if a wine is mentioned in a news article, does that make it not okay? Or, you know, are there certain levels of tolerance where, you know, mentioning a business story about a winery and how it's grown into a successful business is okay, but when it comes to health advice, that's not okay. So it's understanding what's important for your brand altogether. It's then analysing the performance that you currently have. So where are you currently delivering? What are the levels of risk that you are seeing? Do you need to optimise or not? And then once you sort of know what the goal is, where you currently are, you can then start to optimise the buying using the insights that IAS have delivered through the Eskima partnership to buy the best quality media possible. Finally is in geo, and this is the fourth pillar of the quality impressions that advertisers are looking to purchase. So geography matters. If your budget is from Audi in Denmark, for example, you don't really want to be delivering those impressions in the United Kingdom, because even though it's the same brand, it's not going to impact you selling cars in Denmark, which is the money that budget has been assigned from. So what we do is we work with 3 different geo verification partners to make sure that the ads are delivering in the right geography. So that's, I guess, the final pillar in they need to be brand safe, viewable, fraud-free, and in the area that you can actually sell the products. And again, don't just take our word for it. We analyze 10 billion impressions per day, or over 10 billion impressions per day. We work with over 4,000 advertisers. We have contracts with 6 out of 6 of the major agency holding groups. We're integrated with all the major DSPs. We're working with 2,500 media partners, like publishers and platforms. We've got innovations with Facebook, Google. We measure across all the different sort of pillars that you need, and we're all across the world as well. So I've been looking at some of the clients that we work with. These are all clients that are actively familiar with IAS, that we work with on a day-to-day basis in various markets to help them improve their media quality, help them reduce their fraud levels, increase their viewability, and essentially try and build better media quality and better connections with their consumers. So I guess summarising the Skimmy and IAS partnership, and I guess what you can really do is, one, there's the reporting side of things. So there's 2 products that we're using with a Skimmy, but basically with these products, you can get access to IAS specific metrics. So viewability, brand safety or brand risk, invalid traffic, time in view, and a couple of other metrics, which you can then get on your campaigns. The next one, we do have a blocking product available. So if you have very strict brand safety concerns, you are able to actually block some ads from appearing in environments where you don't want them to appear. And that's something that is available. Again, you probably have to speak to Gabrielle and the team at Skimmy to get specifics on how to activate it, but that's one of the capabilities. Personalized. So if you do want to create an IAS account directly, you can then wrap your own tags and have your own reporting dashboard. That's possible as well. I'd recommend that if you're putting lots and lots of volume through and you want to, I guess, get a deeper understanding yourself in your own dashboards, but you know that there are going to be additional costs for that. And then coming soon in the future is contextual. I mean, contextual is talked about a lot in especially the UK markets, and it's something that a lot of publishers are trying to, and advertisers are trying to build out capabilities for. particularly with the demise of the third-party cookie. But yeah, so IAS has tools available for that, which we're hoping to be able to roll out in the future. And being able to understand the emotions and sentiment of content, along with keywords, entities, and a range of other things. And that's pretty well it. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Clem, thank you for the really nice and great deep dive. I would have first one question from my side, and then we can jump to the Q&A from the people that are watching. So I just wanted to maybe, if you have any insights, how 2020 impacted how IS was utilized, and did brand sensitivity changed due to higher fragility and everything. So what were the whole situation during the 2020?
Sure. So there was two big things that impacted IAS in 2020. So one of them was the coronavirus pandemic, and the other was the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. So we found very early on in the coronavirus pandemic, a lot of the content being created was pretty dark. It was all about death tolls, and it was very grim outlook, pretty hopeless, sort of like stuff that brands don't really want to be associated with. So a lot of brands were wanting to block coronavirus content, but because it was such a worldwide news story, if you blocked all coronavirus content, your scale went from, if that's the whole internet, you only had that much to deliver out on. And so publishers started serving out blank impressions, and advertisers weren't able to get scale. The sort of supply and demand meant that publishers' floor prices for open market dropped, whereas because the demand dropped as well, because some advertisers hit pause, some blocked everything, and it was a bit of a bad situation for the market. What we were able to do is work with the advertisers and the publishers to understand within coronavirus content, what was the content that brands wanted to avoid and what was the stuff that they were okay with. So when you had, early on in the pandemic, I think there was Italians during lockdown who were singing from their balconies and really sort of nice, good content around lockdown. That's the sort of stuff that brands wanted to be around, but this sort of blanket approach, similar to how we spoke about alcohol earlier, that blanket approach blocked everything. So we were helping brands to understand that, look, if you want to block coronavirus content, let's block only the bad stuff. Let's block the deaths and the sort of morbid content, but we'll include the stuff that's, I guess, more news, or not more newsworthy, but that when your brand appears alongside, it's a good connection. And so that was sort of an education piece to help. So some advertisers, as they completely stopped advertising, they were able to realize that they could advertise in a safe way, and then restarted their advertising. Same with publishers who were able to segment their inventory into safe and unsafe when it came to coronavirus. So that was a big thing. And then similarly with the Black Lives Matter, some brands just blocked everything to do with it because it was a very complicated social issue. And again, we had to educate brands to not block everything or not just stop advertising altogether, but to figure out what they were comfortable and weren't comfortable with, and then use the tools available to appear in the areas that they wanted to appear in.
Yeah, it's cool that you actually listened and to the market and made adjustments. That's really cool. You the connector between the advertiser and the publisher. So yeah, we have few questions in our Q&A box. So first question would be, is out of view because it is blocked by the user?
No. So ad blockers, and this is how I understand it, is that ad blockers will never call the creative server. So because the creative server hasn't been called, there's no ad, someone like a skimmy, you would never count the ad serving as an impression because it was never called in the first place. So ad blockers, I guess they stop further up the chain, but yeah, it's a good question. I believe it's more, what we would call an out of view ad is when the ad has been called, but then it's not seen on the screen. So if it's, you've opened up 3 tabs, the ads have all been called, but you've not actually gone onto those tabs yet, then they're going to be not in view. But if you had an ad blocker in place, when you open those tabs, the ad would never get called, so it would never have a chance to, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it can actually be related with like the publisher, and maybe the ad is like really heavy, for example. This is why
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's why, we have a lot of uh, advertisers who, maybe a few years ago were starting to create really, really heavy HTML5 rich media
Yeah.
ads, which looked great, but the internet speeds weren't fast enough to deliver them. So they were seeing, buying in these traditionally really high viewable placements, but seeing really low viewable levels because the ad was taking too long to load.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point.
Yeah, I believe in Eskimi, like we try to do our ads, like rich media ads, really responsive, so it wouldn't be like so heavy and it would load properly. The second question would be, does IS recommend benchmark for viewability rate after examining the brand and campaign?
Yeah, so typically we'll see different so typically a brand will set up different viewability benchmarks for different campaigns. So if they were buying say an open market, sort of they're buying across one lot of media, and again, it comes down to figuring out the ROI. So if it's, say, a $2 CPM when you deliver it on the open market, and that has an average viewability rate of 30% versus paying $5 for a PMP with a delivery rate, so with a viewability rate of 60%, is $5 for 60% better off than $2 for 30%? And I guess brands need to figure out, what makes the most, how can they pay for the most amount of viewable ads rather than paying too much for less viewable ads by trying to have higher targeting. And that's sort of like more from an open market perspective. Then you can use those same principles looking at PMPs. I'm not sure if you offer PMPs, but and working closer with brands and executing through those sort of private marketplaces. Again, what's the average viewability that you're seeing? If you were to target, or if you were trying to get only the highest levels of viewability, what's the cost benefit that comes into it? Sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Does IS recommend a benchmark for viewability rate after examining the brand and campaign?
Yes, sorry. And then you could have different, depending on a brand campaign, which is never going to be clicked on, for example, it doesn't have a call to action on the creative. That is probably more important that ad's viewable, because all it's going to ever do is be seen. The click-through rate expects to be lower on that creative than on the creative which has a call to action on it. So the benefit of showing those viewable ads, particularly on a brand campaign, is that they're seen, and then someone might make a decision later on. But if that ad's never seen, it's very difficult for them to influence someone to then make a decision later on. Whereas the performance ads, you can probably buy them for cheaper with a CTA and then find that sort of ROI balance. But that's, I guess, the performance ads. Typically, sorry, I'm confusing it slightly. Brand advertising will generally have a benchmark to a much higher viewability level, whereas performance will typically be slightly lower. Ideally, you'd want both of them to be as viewable as possible, but performance is a lot more ROI based, whereas brand is a lot more harder to measure metrics. So as long as the ad's being seen, that's sometimes as much as can be done.
Yeah, I believe again, it's really important to evaluate the publishers where the ads were served with high viewability. Sometimes, like 100% viewability may not resonate with ROI. So this is what Clem was referring to. So I believe like we shouldn't look at one metric at a point, as like digital landscape is like really complicated. So yeah, and it doesn't consist of one metric that we should rely on. So yeah, got the point. And the last question would be, is it possible for me to get the presentation after this meeting? So,
Yeah. There's nothing in here that I can't share. So I'll send it over to you, Gabrielle, and I'll allow you to
yeah,
share that.
and we will share with so Yeah, I believe this is all from the Q&A. If nobody has any questions, I believe we just have to thank again Clem for the great presentation. And yeah, we will we will do a follow-up for everybody that participated.
No worries.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clem.